The Galactic Concord control room hummed with the soft sounds of machinery. Lights blinked across panels that stretched from floor to ceiling. Creatures of different shapes and sizes moved between stations with practiced ease. Some had scales, others had tentacles, but all wore the same blue uniform with silver trim. Commander Ella Wright stood in the center of this room, her tall, slender body perfectly still. Her skin shimmered with a faint purple glow, a trait common to her species. She had served the Concord for over 100 years, and in that time, very little had surprised her. Today would be different. "Commander, we're picking up an unusual signal," said Officer Paul Green. His four eyes blinked rapidly as he studied his screen. "It's coming from Sector 87D. Ella frowned. "That sector is empty. We surveyed it just 50 cycles ago." "The signal is definitely there," Paul insisted. "And it matches the pattern of a distress call." Ella moved to his station and looked at the screen. The signal pulsed in a distinct pattern, repeating every 12 seconds. It was crude compared to Concord technology, but its meaning was clear. Someone needed help. "How far?" she asked. 3 days at maximum speed." Ella straightened up and touched the communication panel on her wrist. "Connect me to the council." The large screen at the front of the room flickered, and 7 faces appeared. These were the Council of Elders, the leaders of the Galactic Concord. Their species varied, but they all shared the same expression of mild annoyance at being disturbed. "This better be important, Commander Wright," said Grand Arbiter Kaztix. His insect-like mandibles clicked together impatiently. "We've detected a distress signal from Sector 87D, Ella reported. "Request permission to investigate." The Council. Members looked at each other. Elder Vox, a cloud-like being of pure energy, spoke first. "That sector was empty during our last survey." "The signal is primitive," Ella admitted, "but our laws are clear. We must respond to all distress calls." Grand Arbiter Kazatix made a dismissive gesture with one of his forearms. "It's probably just space debris causing false readings, or perhaps a natural phenomenon." "With all due respect," Ella countered, "the pattern is too regular to be natural, and our equipment doesn't make these kinds of mistakes." The Council fell silent for a moment. The Galactic Concord had existed for over 3,000 years, uniting 17 intelligent species across 38 star systems. In all that time, they had never encountered a new spacefaring civilization. The idea both excited and frightened them. "Very well," Grand Arbiter Kaztix finally said. "You may take one reconnaissance ship to investigate, but proceed with caution. If you find a new species, remember Protocol 7. Protocol 7 was simple. Observe, document, and determine if the new species posed any threat to Concord stability. If they did, elimination was authorized." "Understood," Ella said, bowing slightly. The screen went dark. Officer Gary Peterson approached her station. He was one of the few humans in the Concord fleet, his species having joined only 2 centuries ago. "Do you really think we'll find something out there?" "I don't know," Ella replied honestly, "but I've never seen a signal quite like this before." Gary nodded, his face serious. "I'll prepare the Twilight Observer for departure." The Twilight Observer was the newest and fastest ship in the reconnaissance fleet. It could travel through hyperspace with ease and was equipped with the best scanning technology available. If anything was out there, they would find it. Ella selected her team carefully. Science Officer Donna Harris, Medical Officer Alan Pierce, Security Chief William Foster, and Communications Specialist Linda Scott. All were experienced officers who had worked with her before. Gary Peterson would serve as her second-in-command. They departed 6 hours later, slipping into hyperspace, with barely a ripple. The journey was uneventful, giving them time to review all available data on Sector 87D. It was a region with 14 stars, most without planets. Only one star had a system that could potentially support life, a yellow star much like the one in Gary's home system. On the 3rd day they arrived. Ella ordered the ship to emerge from hyperspace at a safe distance from the signal's source. "Scan the area," she commanded. Donna's fingers moved quickly over her console. "The signal is coming from the 3rd planet of that yellow star. There's There's a small station in orbit around it and several small spacecraft nearby. She paused, her expression changing. Commander, the station appears damaged, and the spacecraft aren't moving. Ella felt a chill run through her body. Life signs? Donna adjusted her instruments. Very faint. I'm detecting one life form on the station. The signature doesn't match any known species in our database. What about weapons discharge? Asked William, the security chief. Confirmed, Donna replied. But the energy pattern is unlike anything I've seen before. Ella considered her options. Protocol dictated caution, but someone was alive on that station. They needed help. Move us closer, she ordered. Prepare a rescue team. Full biohazard. Protocols. The Twilight Observer glided silently toward the damaged station. As they drew closer, they could see the extent of the destruction. Large sections of the station were simply gone, as if something had taken bites out of the structure. The small spacecraft floating nearby were equally damaged. This wasn't an accident, Gary said quietly. This was an attack. The rescue team, led by William, boarded the station in protective suits. They moved carefully through the damaged corridors, following the life sign reading. What they found was a creature unlike any they had encountered before. It was bipedal, with smooth skin that showed a faint blue tint. It lay unconscious among the wreckage, clearly injured but alive. They brought it back to the ship, where Alan immediately took it to the medical bay. Hours passed as he worked to stabilize the alien, adapting Concord medical techniques to its unique biology. Ella waited outside with Gary. Whatever attacked that station could still be out there, she said. Gary nodded grimly. Should we contact the council? Before Ella could answer, Alan emerged from the medical bay. The patient is conscious, he announced. And you won't believe this, but it's speaking in perfect galactic standard. Ella and Gary exchanged surprised looks. They entered the medical bay together, approaching the bed where the alien lay. Its eyes opened as they approached, 4 eyes, arranged in a diamond pattern on its face. Thank the stars, it said weakly. I thought no one would come. We received your distress signal, Ella said. I am Commander Ella Wright of the Galactic Concord. Can you tell us what happened? The alien tried to sit up but winced in pain. My name is Richard Kelly. I'm a researcher with the Zendari Science Academy. It paused, looking at Gary with evident surprise. You look like them. Like who? Gary asked. The humans, Richard Kelly whispered, fear clear in all 4 of his eyes. They're the ones who did this, and trust me when I say this, if they found your civilization, you should be terrified. The medical bay fell silent. All eyes turned to Gary Peterson, the only human on the ship. He shifted uncomfortably under their stares. I assure you, Gary said to the injured alien, I mean you no harm. Richard Kelly, the blue-skinned Zendari, tried to move away from Gary despite his injuries. That's exactly what they said to us at first. Commander Ella Wright stepped between them. Officer Peterson has served the Concord faithfully for 7 years. Whatever these other humans did, he is not responsible. Richard didn't look convinced, but he relaxed slightly. Dr. Alan Pierce checked the alien's vital signs on his medical scanner. You need rest, Alan told Richard. We can continue this conversation when you're stronger. There's no time, Richard insisted. His 4 eyes blinked rapidly in distress. You don't understand what's coming. Ella pulled up a chair beside the medical bed. Then help us understand. Start from the beginning. Richard took a deep breath. The Zendari discovered Earth 3 years ago. We observed them from orbit for months before making contact. They seemed primitive. Their technology was centuries behind ours. They had only recently reached their own moon. Just like when we found humans, Ella noted, glancing at Gary. Yes, but these humans were different, Richard continued. We established a joint research station at the edge of their system. We thought we were helping them advance. We shared some of our knowledge. Nothing dangerous, just basic science. What went wrong? Asked Donna Harris, who had joined them in the medical bay. Richard's voice grew quieter. At first, nothing. They were eager students, always asking questions, always wanting to learn more. They sent their best scientists to work with us. One of them was Dr. Nancy Martin. She led their team. His expression changed as he mentioned the name, a mixture of fondness and betrayal. 3 months ago, they received a transmission from Earth. They wouldn't tell us what it said, but they began acting differently afterward. They started modifying the station's communication array. When we asked why, they said it was routine maintenance. Richard struggled to sit up. Alan helped him adjusting the bed. Then one night during the sleep cycle, they sabotaged our ships. When we woke up, they had control of the station. Most of my colleagues were captured. I managed to hide in the ventilation system. What did they want? Ella asked. Our navigation data, Richard said. The locations of all inhabited systems in this part of the galaxy. When my people refused to provide it, the humans... He stopped, clearly disturbed by the memory. You don't have to continue, Alan said gently. No, you need to know. Richard's voice hardened. They didn't torture my colleagues, that would have been expected. Instead, they used psychology against us. They isolated individuals, told them the others had already talked. They created false evidence, made some believe their families were in danger. Psychological warfare, Gary said quietly. It's been used on Earth for centuries. Richard looked at him sharply. It worked. Within days, they had everything they wanted. I managed to steal a small scout ship during a maintenance cycle. I set the distress beacon and hoped someone would find me before they did. Ella stood up and paced the small medical bay. I need to report this to the council immediately. As she turned to leave, an alarm sounded throughout the ship. Linda Scott's voice came over the communication system. Commander, multiple vessels. Approaching at high speed. Ella rushed to the bridge, followed by Gary. The main view screen showed several ships moving toward them, their design unlike anything in Concord records. They were bulky and angular, with visible weapons ports along their hulls. Scan them, Ella ordered. Donna's hands flew across her console. 7 ships. Their energy signatures are unusual, highly fluctuating but powerful. They're using some form of propulsion I've never seen before. Are they the same ones that attacked the station? Ella asked. Their weapon signatures match the damage patterns we observed, Donna confirmed. Open a communication channel, Ella said. Standard greeting protocol. Linda activated the communication system. Channel open. Ella stood tall. This is Commander. Ella Wright of the Galactic Concord vessel Twilight Observer. We are on a peaceful mission. Please identify yourselves. The view screen flickered, and a face appeared. It looked remarkably like Gary's, a human face but with harder features. The human wore a dark uniform with insignia Ella didn't recognize. This is Captain Adam Hayes of the Earth Defense Force. You are harboring a fugitive responsible for the deaths of 37 human citizens. Power down your systems and prepare to be boarded. Ella maintained her composure. We have rescued a survivor from a damaged station. He is under our protection. We would welcome peaceful discussion of your claims. Captain Hayes laughed, but there was no humor in it. Discussion? Is that what the lizard told you we want? Let me guess. He said we attacked them without provocation? We're still gathering information, Ella replied carefully. Perhaps you could share your perspective. My perspective? Hayes leaned closer to the screen. My perspective is that the Zendari were conducting illegal experiments on human subjects. We have proof. When we confronted them, they tried to destroy that proof. People died. From behind Ella came a weak voice. He's lying. Richard Kelly had followed them to the bridge, supported by Dr. Alan Pierce. The Zendari looked directly at the screen. You're a monster, Hayes. You murdered my colleagues in cold blood. Hayes smiled coldly. Hello, Richard. Still spreading. Your lies. Show them the files we found. Show them what your precious Science Academy was really doing on that station. Don't listen to him, Richard pleaded to Ella. Humans are masters of deception. It's what makes them so dangerous. Ella raised her hand for silence. Captain Hayes, we operate under Concord law. If you have evidence of crimes, it must be presented to the Concord Council for judgment. Until then, this individual remains under our protection. Hayes's expression hardened. You have 1 hour to hand him over. After that, we will take him by force. The screen went dark. Silence filled the bridge. Finally, Gary spoke. Commander, if what Hayes says is true— We don't know what's true yet, Ella interrupted. But I know this. The Concord does not surrender those under its protection based on threats. She turned to Linda. Send a priority message to the Council. We need reinforcements immediately. The nearest Concord fleet is 4 days away, Linda reported after checking. Ella looked at the tactical display. The human ships had formed a blockade, cutting off their escape route. Then we need to survive for 4 days, she said. Battle stations, and get Richard back to the medical bay. I want to hear more about these humans. As the crew rushed to their positions, Ella studied the human vessels on the screen. In 3,000 years, the Concord had never lost a military engagement. Their technology was superior to anything known in the galaxy. But, as she watched the human ships moving with unexpected precision, Ella felt something she hadn't experienced in her century of service. Doubt. The 1-hour deadline from Captain Hayes was about to expire. Commander Ella Wright gathered her senior officers in the conference room. The tactical display showed the 7 human ships still in formation around the Twilight Observer. Options? Ella asked. William Foster, the security chief, spoke first. Their weapons appear powerful, but their shields might not be as advanced as ours. If we make a run for it, we could possibly survive long enough to enter hyperspace and risk starting a war with an unknown species. Donna Harris shook her head. The Council would never approve. Gary Peterson had been quiet throughout the meeting. Now all eyes turned to him. You're human, Ella said. What insight can you give us about these people? Gary looked uncomfortable. The humans you found in my home system were peaceful when you discovered them. We had moved beyond our violent past. But Earth's history is filled with conflict. If these humans followed a different path, they might still embrace warfare as a primary solution. So you believe Captain Hayes would actually attack us? Ella asked. I believe that making threats they don't intend to follow through on would be seen as weakness, Gary replied. And humans historically hate appearing weak. The communication panel chimed. Linda Scott's voice came through. Commander, Captain, Hayes is hailing us again. Put him through, Ella ordered. The screen lit up with Hayes' stern face. Your time is up, Commander Wright. What's your decision? Ella stood tall. Captain Hayes, the individual you seek is under Concord protection. We cannot surrender him based solely on your accusations. However, we invite you to accompany us to Concord space where your claims can be properly investigated. Hayes smiled without warmth. I expected this response. Zendari lies are very convincing. He looked to someone off screen and nodded. Since you refuse to cooperate, we'll have to take more direct action. The screen went dark. They're powering. Up weapons, William shouted. Shields to maximum, Ella commanded. Evasive pattern Delta. The Twilight Observer lurched as its engines fired. The ship was not designed for combat, but it was fast and agile. As they moved, the human vessels adjusted their positions with surprising speed. They're tracking us too easily, Donna said. It's like they can predict our movements. A bright flash lit up the view screen as energy beams lanced out from the lead human ship. The Twilight Observer shuddered under the impact. Shields at 80%, William reported. Their weapons are more powerful than we anticipated. Return fire, Ella ordered. Target their propulsion systems only. The Concord vessel fired back, blue energy streaking toward the nearest human ship. To everyone's surprise, the ship rolled smoothly out of the way. They're too fast, William exclaimed. Another series of hits rocked the Twilight Observer. Shields at 60%, William updated. We can't take much more of this. Ella was about to order another evasive maneuver when Alan Pierce rushed onto the bridge supporting Richard Kelly. He has something important to tell you, Alan said. Richard looked worse than before, his blue skin now pale. There's something you need to know about humans, he gasped. Something we discovered during our research. This isn't the time, Ella started, but Richard continued anyway. They evolved as pack hunters on a death world, he said urgently. Everything about them, their biology, psychology, social structures, it's all built around overcoming stronger opponents through adaptation and relentless aggression. What does that have to do with our current situation? Ella demanded as another hit shook the ship. It means they're not fighting at full capacity, Richard explained. They're testing you, learning your patterns, finding your weaknesses. Each attack tells them more about your capabilities. Gary nodded slowly. He's right. It's an old Earth military strategy. Probe the enemy's defenses before committing to a full attack. So what do we do? Asked Donna. Something unpredictable, Gary suggested. Something that goes against logical combat tactics. Ella thought for a moment. Linda, open a channel to all human vessels. When the channel was open, Ella spoke clearly. Attention Earth vessels. We are lowering our shields and powering down weapons. I invite Captain Hayes to come aboard with a small team to discuss this situation peacefully. Her officers looked at her in shock. Commander, are you sure about this? William whispered. Ella muted the transmission. No. But if Richard and Gary are right, the humans are expecting us to either run or fight. They won't expect surrender. She unmuted the channel. Captain Hayes, as a show of good faith, I will allow you to meet with Richard Kelly under Concord supervision. Perhaps we can resolve this misunderstanding without further violence. There was a long pause before Hayes responded. An interesting proposal, Commander. I accept. I will shuttle over with 2 officers. Any sign of treachery, and my fleet will open fire. Understood, Ella replied. We will await your arrival. After the transmission ended, William exploded. This is madness. You're letting them board us? No, Ella said. I'm buying us time, and I'm going to find out who's telling the truth. She turned to Gary. I need you there when I meet Hayes. Me? Gary looked surprised. Why? Because you're human, Ella said. You might notice things about him that the rest of us miss. 30 minutes later, they waited in the docking bay as the human shuttle landed. The doors opened, and 3 figures emerged. Captain Adam Hayes was flanked by 2 officers, a man and a woman. All 3 wore dark uniforms with weapons at their sides. Hayes looked around the bay with obvious curiosity. Impressive ship, he commented, though I expected something bigger from the mighty Galactic Concord. This is a reconnaissance vessel, not a warship, Ella replied. I am Commander Wright. This is my 2nd officer, Gary Peterson. Hayes's eyes widened slightly when he saw Gary. A human? Serving the Concord? There are 17 species in the Concord, Ella explained. Humans joined 2 centuries ago. Hayes exchanged glances with his officers. Interesting. Where are these humans from? The Proxima Centauri system, Gary answered. Our ancestors left Earth over 500 years ago. Colony ships, Hayes nodded. That explains a few things. He straightened his uniform. Now, where is Richard Kelly? In our medical bay, Ella said. But first I want to see this evidence you mentioned. The proof that the Zendari were conducting experiments on humans. Hayes gestured to the female officer beside him. Lieutenant Olivia Reed has the files. Reed held out a small data device. This contains logs, research notes, and biological samples taken from the station. It clearly shows the Zendari were studying human adaptability through controlled stress. Experiments without consent. Donna took the device. I'll need to verify this. Of course, Hayes agreed. Take all the time you need. His confident smile suggested he had nothing to hide. Ella studied Hayes carefully. Either he was telling the truth or he was an exceptional liar. She couldn't tell which. While your officer examines the evidence, Hayes continued, perhaps you could tell me more about this Galactic Concord of yours. We've only recently begun exploring beyond our system, and we find ourselves curious about our neighbors. The way he said, curious, sent a chill down Ella's spine. It reminded her of a predator studying its prey. The conquered has existed for over 3,000 years, she replied cautiously. We maintain peace and order across 38 star systems. Impressive, Hayes said, but his tone suggested he found it anything but. And how many ships in your fleet? Ella smiled. That would be classified information, Captain. Hayes laughed. Worth a try. His expression turned serious. But understand this, Commander Wright. Humanity won't be intimidated, not even by a 3,000-year-old galactic power. If the Concord threatens Earth or its interests, we will respond decisively. It wasn't just a statement, Ella realized. It was a warning. 2 hours after Captain Hayes and his officers came aboard the Twilight Observer, Donna Harris finished analyzing the data they had provided. Commander Ella Wright called everyone to the conference room to hear the results. Richard Kelly sat at one end of the table, still weak but determined to be present. Captain Hayes and his officers sat opposite him, their faces neutral. The Concord officers filled the remaining seats, with Gary Peterson sitting closest to Ella. What did you find? Ella asked Donna. Donna placed a datapad on the table. The evidence is troubling. These files contain research logs from the Joint Station. They show the Zendari were conducting tests on human subjects while they slept. Richard's 4 eyes widened. That's not possible. Those records are fake. We recovered them from your own computers, Lieutenant Reed said coldly. Donna continued. The logs detail experiments measuring human stress responses, pain thresholds, and adaptability. They were testing how quickly humans could recover from various injuries. This is absurd, Richard protested. Why would we do such things? Because you feared us, Hayes answered simply. You recognized our potential and wanted to understand our weaknesses. The room fell silent. Finally, Gary spoke up. Commander, may I see those logs? Donna passed him the datapad. Gary studied it carefully, his expression growing more troubled. These appear authentic, he admitted, but there's something odd about them. The Zendari language patterns don't match Richard's speech patterns. What are you suggesting? Hayes asked sharply. I'm not sure, Gary replied, but something doesn't feel right. Ella turned to Richard. Did your people keep research logs? Of course, Richard said. All scientific work was documented, but we were studying cosmic anomalies, not humans. Then how do you explain these? Reed demanded, pointing at the datapad. Richard's voice shook with emotion. I can't, unless... He paused, thinking hard. Unless you created them. Hayes laughed. That's your defense? That we fabricated elaborate research logs in your language? Actually, Gary interrupted, if these humans are as advanced as they appear to be, that's not impossible. Hayes gave Gary a cold look. You're taking the word of a Zendari over fellow humans? I'm keeping an open mind, Gary replied evenly. The tension in the room was broken by Linda Scott's voice over the communication system. Commander, we're receiving a transmission from Concord Space. It's Grand Arbiter Kaztix. Put it through to the conference room, Ella ordered. The large screen on the wall lit up, showing the insect-like face of the Grand Arbiter. His compound eyes seemed to take in everyone in the room at once. Commander Wright, he began, we received your distress call. A battle fleet has been dispatched, but they are still 3 days from your position. His gaze shifted to the humans. I see you have company. This is Captain Adam Hayes of Earth, Ella introduced. They claim the Zendari were conducting unauthorized experiments on their people. Kazatix's mandibles clicked together. Is there evidence of this? Yes, Hayes said before Ella could answer. We've provided files recovered from the research station. And you are? Kazatix asked, looking at Richard. Richard Kelly of the Zendari Science Academy. Grand Arbiter, these humans attacked our station without provocation. They killed my colleagues and stole our research. Kazatix considered this. 2 conflicting accounts. This is troubling. Captain Hayes stood up. Grand Arbiter, Earth has no quarrel with your Concord. We only seek justice for crimes committed against our people. Hand over the Zendari, and we will leave your territory peacefully. This is Concord space, Kazitix replied, his voice suddenly cold. You have no authority here, Captain. Commander Wright has my full support in protecting anyone under Concord jurisdiction until a proper investigation can be conducted. Hayes's expression hardened. Then you leave us no choice but to take him by force. That would be unwise, Kazitix warned. The Concord has maintained peace in this region for thousands of years. We do not take kindly to threats. Hayes smiled without humor. Neither do we. The screen suddenly went blank. Alarms blared throughout. The ship. They've cut our communication, William shouted. And they're powering up weapons again. Ella turned to Hayes. What have you done? Secured our position, Hayes replied calmly. He tapped a device on his wrist. All ships, commence attack pattern Omega. Before anyone could react, the conference room doors slid open, and 6 armed humans rushed in. They wore the same dark uniforms as Hayes and carried advanced weapons. No one move, Hayes commanded. He drew his own weapon and pointed it at Ella. I'm taking control of this vessel. The Concord officers froze. William reached slowly for his sidearm, but one of the human soldiers fired. A burst of energy hit William's hand, making him cry out in pain. The next shot will be lethal, Hayes warned. Now, all of you, hands on the table. Outside, through the viewport, they could see the human ships opening fire on the Twilight Observer. The shields flared blue with each impact. You won't get away with this, Ella said. Even if you take this ship, the Concord fleet will hunt you down. Hayes seemed unconcerned. By the time they arrive, we'll be long gone, and we'll have everything we need. What do you want? Gary asked. It can't just be Richard. Smart. Question, Hayes nodded. We want your navigation data, your shield technology, and your hyperspace drive specifications. Earth is expanding, and we need every advantage we can get. Richard looked at Ella. You see? This was their plan all along. They used the same strategy on us. Lieutenant Reed walked to a computer terminal and inserted a small device. Downloading their database now, Captain. Gary leaned toward Ella and whispered, They don't know about the emergency protocols. Ella gave a tiny nod. Every Concord vessel had safety measures in case of hostile takeover. A specific sequence of commands would lock down all sensitive data and send a final distress signal with the ship's exact coordinates. While Hayes was distracted giving orders to his team, Ella carefully tapped a pattern on the underside of the table. The lights flickered momentarily. What was that? Hayes demanded. Shield fluctuation from your attack, Donna answered quickly. You're damaging your prize, Captain. Hayes studied her for a moment, then turned to Reed. How's the download? Coming? Reed frowned at her device. Something's wrong. I can't access their navigation charts or technical specifications. Everything's locked behind security I can't break. Hayes's face darkened with anger. He grabbed Ella by the arm. What did you do? Standard security protocol, she replied calmly. No unauthorized access to Concord technology. Override it, Hayes demanded. I can't, Ella said. Once activated, it can only be reversed at Concord headquarters. Hayes looked at each of the Concord officers, trying to determine if she was lying. Then he made a decision. Gather them all. We're taking the ship to Earth space. Our scientists can crack their security there. As the human soldiers began to move the prisoners, Gary caught Ella's eye. The emergency protocol had done more than lock down the data. It had also sent their exact location to the incoming Concord fleet and activated a hidden distress beacon that would bring help much sooner than Hayes expected. They just had to stay alive long enough for that help to arrive. 12 hours had passed since Captain Hayes and his soldiers took control of the Twilight Observer. The Concord officers were locked in the cargo bay, guarded by 2 armed humans. Richard Kelly was kept separately, likely undergoing questioning, by Lieutenant Reed. Ella Wright sat with her back against the wall, conserving her energy. Beside her, Gary Peterson was trying to engage their guards in conversation, with limited success. How long until we reach Earth space? Gary asked one of the guards. The guard, a young man with short brown hair, hesitated before answering. Captain said about 2 days at our current speed. And then what? Gary pressed. What happens to us? Not my concern, the guard replied, but his eyes betrayed uncertainty. Donna Harris moved closer to Ella. The emergency beacon should have reached nearby Concord outposts by now, she whispered. Help could arrive sooner than Hayes expects. Ella nodded slightly. We need to be ready to act when it does. The cargo bay doors slid open, and Captain Hayes entered, followed by Lieutenant Reed. They had changed into fresh uniforms and looked pleased with themselves. Your ship is impressive, Commander, Hayes said. Primitive in some ways, advanced in others. Our engineers are having a fascinating time studying it. Ella didn't respond, choosing instead to stare at him coldly. Hayes continued, undeterred. I thought you might like to know that your Zendari friend has been most helpful. After some persuasion, he admitted that his people have been observing Earth for years. What have you done to him? Alan Pierce demanded. Nothing permanent, Reed answered smoothly. We've simply explained the consequences of non-cooperation. Gary stood up. This isn't right, Hayes. Whatever grievance you have with the Zendari, the Conquered isn't your enemy. Not yet, Hayes agreed. But that could change. Your Grand Arbiter made his position clear, and frankly, we can't allow a power like the Conquered to decide humanity's fate. So this is about more than just Richard Kelly, Ella realized. You're preparing for war with the Conquered. Hayes smiled. Let's call it preparing for all possibilities. Earth has learned the hard way that the universe isn't always friendly. We won't be caught unprepared again. A sudden alarm blared throughout. The ship. Hayes tapped his communication device. Report! A panicked voice responded. Multiple ships just appeared out of hyperspace, Captain. They're surrounding us. Hayes rushed out of the cargo bay, leaving Reed and the 2 guards to watch. The prisoners. Donna looked at Ella with hope in her eyes. The Concorde fleet. Too soon, Ella whispered back. It must be someone else. Minutes later, the ship shuddered violently. The guards looked nervous. What's happening? One of them asked Reed. Stay. At your post, she ordered, but her hand moved to her weapon. The ship rocked again, harder this time. The lights flickered and died, replaced by dim emergency lighting. The cargo bay doors, controlled by the main power system, slid partly open. William Foster immediately saw the opportunity. He lunged at the nearest guard, tackling him to the ground. The other guard raised his weapon, but Gary was faster, throwing himself forward and knocking the guard off balance. Lieutenant Reed fired, her weapon, but in the dim light she missed. Ella grabbed a metal container and hurled it at Reed, striking her in the shoulder. Reed stumbled, and Donna moved quickly to disarm her. Within moments, the Concord officers had overpowered their captors. Secure them, Ella ordered as she took Reed's weapon. William, Gary, with me. We need to reach the bridge. The 3 of them slipped through the partially open doors into the corridor. Emergency lights cast eerie shadows as they moved cautiously forward. Who do you think is attacking? William asked. We'll find out soon enough, Ella replied. They encountered little resistance on their way to the bridge. Most of the human soldiers were either at battle stations or trying to repair damaged systems. When they reached the bridge, they found chaos. Captain Hayes was shouting orders as his crew frantically worked the controls. Through the view screen, they could see the cause of the attack. 5 sleek vessels with distinctive blue markings. Zendari ships. Richard Kelly's voice came from behind them. He looked beaten but alive, supported by Alan, who had found him during the confusion. Hayes turned at the sound, his face contorting with anger when he saw Ella and the others. How? Did you get out? Your attack damaged the door controls, Ella said, raising her weapon. Now step away from the command console. Instead of complying, Hayes drew his own weapon. Before he could fire, the ship rocked violently again. A console exploded, sending sparks flying. Shields are failing, one of Hayes's officers shouted. The Zendari weapons are somehow bypassing our defenses. Gary moved to a secondary console. They're targeting specific systems, weapons, engines, life support. They know exactly where to hit us. Of course they do, Richard said. They designed this station. They've been studying it for months. Hayes looked from the view screen to Ella, calculation in his eyes. Finally, he lowered his weapon. It seems we've been outmaneuvered, Commander. Order your ships to stand down, Ella demanded. Hayes hesitated, then nodded to his communications officer. Moments later, the attack stopped. A new face appeared on the view screen. A Zendari with deep blue skin and ceremonial markings. This is Admiral Voss of the Zendari Defense Fleet, the figure announced. Captain Hayes, your forces are surrounded. Surrender or be destroyed. Hayes stepped forward. Admiral, we acted in defense of our people after discovering your experiments. Silence. Voss interrupted. Your lies have no power here. We recovered the true records from our station. We know what you did. How you manipulated our data to create false evidence. Richard moved into view of the screen. Admiral, thank the stars you found us. Richard Kelly, Voss acknowledged. It is good to see you alive. Your warning allowed us to mobilize in time. Ella stepped between them. Admiral Voss, I am Commander Ella Wright of the Galactic Concord. This vessel is under Concord jurisdiction. Voss bowed slightly. We respect the Concord, Commander, but these humans have committed crimes against the Zendari people. We demand justice. The Concord will ensure justice is served, Ella assured him. But first we need to know the truth, all of it. Admiral Voss agreed to come aboard with Richard. Meanwhile, the Zendari fleet maintained its position, weapons trained on the human ships. In the conference room, Richard revealed what really happened. The humans had indeed come to study cosmic anomalies, but they had secretly been gathering information about Zendari technology. When discovered, they created false evidence to justify their actions. They are clever and dangerous, Voss added, more so than any species we've encountered. Hayes, now under guard, showed no remorse. We did what was necessary to protect Earth's interests. The galaxy is a dangerous place. Ella looked from Hayes to Richard to Voss. This incident must be reported to the Concord Council. They will decide what happens next. Later, as the Concord fleet finally arrived, Ella stood in her quarters dictating her report. The incident would have far-reaching consequences. 2 new spacefaring races had been discovered, humans from Earth and the Zendari, both powerful, both potentially dangerous. Gary entered after knocking. The Council is requesting your immediate testimony, Commander. Ella nodded. What do you think will happen now? Gary considered the question. Earth won't back down easily. They'll see the Concord as a threat to their expansion. And the Zendari want revenge, Ella added. We could be looking at the beginning of a conflict unlike anything the Concord has seen in thousands of years, all because of a distress signal, Gary said quietly. Ella turned to look out at the stars. The galaxy just became a much more complicated place, and somehow I don't think any of us are prepared for what comes next. In the holding cell, Captain Hayes sat alone, a slight smile on his face. The signal he had managed to send before surrendering was brief, but it contained everything Earth needed. Coordinates for conquered space, technological weaknesses, and a simple message. They are not ready for us. The distress signal had been answered, and what had arrived would change the galaxy forever.